Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
We will continue our discussion on sustainability assessment. In the previous module, I talked about different sustainability indicators. In this module, I'll start discussion on sustainability indices. So this is again a revision of the different ways of doing sustainability assessment that I discussed in the previous module. Revisiting the sustainability indicators, one of the limitations that we identified of sustainability indicators was that they are specific to for a particular dimension of sustainability, and they don't do a holistic assessment of sustainability, and therefore they provide only a partial view of the sustainability of a particular product or system. And that is one shortcoming that sustainability indices attempt to address. So sustainability indices by definition are more holistic in nature. They try to capture all aspects of sustainability to an extent possible. And this they do effectively by doing some kind of an aggregation over multiple indicators. So the idea here in sustainability index calculation is to come up with a single number. Instead of having 10 or 20 or 100 indicators, the final goal is to come up with a single number by doing some kind of an aggregation of different domain specific indicators. And once you come up with a single number, it becomes easier to compare different options because you just have a single number to compare. So that is the primary goal of a sustainability index. I have listed here some commonly used sustainability indices: Human Development Index, Ecological Footprint, Human Wellbeing Index, Carrying Capacity, Natural Capital. Specific to business, there is something known as Dow Jones Sustainability Group Index, or Fisher Information, which is a more information theory based approach. So just like indicators, there are also several types of indices, and I won't be discussing all these indices in detail. Instead, I will focus mainly on the first two indices that I've highlighted in red. And in this particular module, I will start discussion on the Human Development Index, or HDI. So Human Development Index was developed by the United Nations Development Program. And in order to calculate a single number or an index, this particular method focuses on three major categories of human development. First is long and healthy life. Second is knowledge or education. And third is economic prosperity. So United Nations Development Program, the committee identified that these are the three main criteria to consider if you want to quantify human development. And then they looked at specific indicators for these three aspects, and they did some kind of an aggregation, and we will see that in the subsequent slides. So the three important aspects that this index considers are long and healthy life, which essentially talks about the health or the physical health of a human being. Second is knowledge or education, and third is economic prosperity. So let us see how it is calculated. So as I said, there are three dimensions as shown here. So this figure is adapted from the original report, which is cited here at the bottom of the slide. Now for each of these dimensions, they have identified specific indicators. So for long and healthy life, the specific indicator that this method considers is life expectancy at birth. If you remember the previous module, this was one of the indicators or social indicators that I had mentioned. So that is the specific indicator that is used by this method. The particular indicator is converted to a life expectancy index, which is a number between 0 and 1. The second category, which is knowledge or education, the method looks at two different indicators. One is expected year of schooling, and second is mean year of schooling, and there is a slight difference between these two, which is defined on the next slide. And based on these two different indicators, you get an education index, which is again a number between 0 and 1. The third category, which is about economic well-being of an individual, is calculated in terms of GNI per capita, essentially gross national income per capita. And depending on the particular value, that value is converted to an GNI index, which is again a number between 0 and 1. So you get, for these three different categories, you get three numbers between 0 and 1, and in the end they are used to calculate the final Human Development Index. So let me just briefly define the different indicators. The life expectancy at birth is a fairly straightforward indicator. It basically tells you that given if a child is born, what is the typical expected lifespan given the socio-economic conditions of the country and the healthcare facilities available, health and sanitization facilities available, and so on. So that is a fairly straightforward number that I am not discussing. The second, which relates to education or knowledge, relies on two different indicators. One is expected year of schooling. So this is basically the number of years of schooling that a child of school entrance age can expect to receive if prevailing patterns of age-specific enrollment rates persist. So how many years a student is expected to spend in school. And the second one that is used is mean years of schooling. So this is the actual or average number of completed years of education of a country's population aged 25 years or older. So first is an expected year of schooling, and the second is what is the actual average age of schooling for a grown-up individual. And this mean year of schooling accounts for the fact that there could be repeat years. There could be differences in the official school years in countries. So some countries may have 15 years and other countries may have 14 or 17 years and so on. So some of these differences are resolved by looking at both these different indicators. So they are sort of related but not exactly the same. The third category was the GNI per capita, and that again is straightforward calculation. So economists calculate that on a routine basis. So I am again not discussing that in detail. But I want to explain a little bit how the averaging or how the aggregation is done. So for each of these indicators, there are what are known as goalposts. So if I talk about the expected year of schooling, the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 18. So 18 is kind of the best you can have across all the countries. So the human development indices are often calculated at the country level. So the 0 is worst, 18 is best. Similarly, for mean year of schooling, 0 years is worst, best is 15 years. For estimated earned income, the worst or the lowest is $100 at 2011 value, and the maximum is 75,000. So what these goalposts tell you is that if your number, let's say a particular country has a GNI of $30,000, then that 30,000 is normalized on the scale of 100 to 75,000 to get a number between 0 and 1. And the same thing is done for other indicators. For life expectancy at birth, which is calculated in years, the minimum or the worst case scenario is 22 years, 22.5 years for female and 17.5 years for male. And maximum is 87.5 years for female and 82.5 years for male. So again, let's say the life expectancy in a particular country for male is 65 years, then that 65 is normalized on a scale from 17.5 to 82.5 to get a number between 0 and 1. So you'll get a number between 0 and 1 for all these indicators, and then these are averaged. As I said, you get three different indices, sub-indices you can say, and these are then averaged to calculate the Human Development Index. So the detailed calculation procedure is given in the document that is mentioned at the bottom. It's a manual that is about the calculation of Human Development Index. So that procedure it's a fairly straightforward calculation. You can very easily understand it. What this table shows is the comparison of different countries and the Human Development Index rank along with the HDI score. And I am giving the actual values of different indicators. So Norway is ranked first in terms of HDI, and its HDI score is 0.954. So HDI is a number between 0 and 1, 1 being the best and 0 being the worst. So Norway has an HDI score of 0.954. It is the first ranked country, and the specific indicators are given here. So I have given you lists for 4 different countries in roughly 4 different zones. So Belarus is ranked 50 and the corresponding indicator values are given here. India is ranked 129th. Its overall HDI score is 0.649, and these are the corresponding indicator values, and similar thing for Niger, which is the lowest ranked country in the list. This figure shows the classification of countries based on the Human Development Index. Now this is a slightly old figure. This figure is for 2011 data. So the numbers would have changed a little bit, but I don't expect the trend to change significantly. And broadly the trend is that countries in North America, Western Europe, Australia, Japan, these are the countries with high Human Development Index, ranging values between 0.8 and 1. Countries in Asia, South America and some African countries, they fall in this medium range between 0.5 and 0.79. And countries in low range values of HDI between 0.2 and 0.49 are generally countries in the African continent. So this is, as I said, HDI is often calculated at country level. And I also mentioned to you that HDI helps you compare easily. So if I want to compare which country is performing better in terms of human development, instead of looking at several indicators, HDI permits us to calculate a single number and then compare a single number. So 0.8 is better than 0.75, 0.75 is better than 0.7, and so on. So the important learning outcomes of this module are: first, I described the concept of a sustainability index, and I highlighted that the index or or these indices provide a holistic assessment. They are often easier for comparison and decision making because you are dealing with a single number, and they often have some kind of an aggregation to calculate that single number. And I specifically talked about one index, which is the Human Development Index, which considers 3 criteria: life expectancy, education and gross income, and the method was briefly discussed. In this module, I will continue the discussion on Sustainability Index and particularly look at an index known as the ecological footprint. To summarize, I mentioned that sustainability indices provide a holistic assessment of sustainability, and they do some kind of an aggregation over multiple indicators. And I had listed several commonly used sustainability indices, and this particular module will focus on the ecological footprint calculation. Now, the concept of ecological footprint was proposed in the early 2000s. So this concept is about 20 years old, and the idea that was essentially used, or the idea that is the basis of this particular footprint calculation, is to convert every resource that we use in terms of the land requirement, and that's why the term footprint. So the unit that is used to calculate ecological footprint is known as global hectares, and the objective here is to convert every every resource that we need to live our life, be it food, energy, materials and so on, to convert that into a land area required. Similarly, it also converts the waste that we are generating into a land area. So every individual will have an ecological footprint in terms of global hectares. So that is the basic concept. So as the second bullet point shows here, it calculates how much land is needed to produce the resources used by a person and assimilate the wastes produced by a person. So there is a lot of literature coming out from the same organization that initially proposed the ecological footprint. So this is the web-based calculator that is accessible online, and in this module I will go through the calculator and we will go step by step and calculate the ecological footprint of an individual. So this is the website, footprintcalculator.org. And if you remember in the first lecture, the motivation lecture, I talked about the concept of Earth Overshoot Day. And if you see this slider going across the screen, it talks about the Earth Overshoot Day this year, which is August 22nd. And at that time I mentioned that the calculation of Earth Overshoot Day is based on the ecological footprint calculation. So we will understand how this ecological footprint is calculated. Now before I go into the actual mathematics behind the calculation, I want to go through this this web-based tool to give you a feel of what are the kind of questions that we typically have to answer or we have to consider to calculate the ecological footprint. So I will enter the ecological footprint calculation, and you will see that there are a series of questions that are asked that relate to the lifestyle. Now I'll do this calculation for myself, and you can do this similar calculation for you. So the first question is about food consumption. So it asks you, how often do you eat animal-based product? Beef, pork, chicken, eggs, and dairy product. Now in my case, I am a vegetarian. I eat eggs and dairy products, but I don't eat any other kind of meat. So I can probably select infrequent, so vegetarian, eggs and dairy, and no meat. Okay, so that applies to me, and those who eat meat can select other option. You can also provide additional information to make your calculation make the calculation more accurate. If you are actually meat eating, you can select how often you eat. Now in my case it is 0, so I will just change it to 0. I will change it to never. Poultry is also never. Fish and shellfish is also never. And eggs, cheese and dairy product, obviously I eat nearly every day. So I will keep it like that. I will say often, and I will save. So that was the first question. Moving on to the second question, it is about again food. The question is, how much of the food that you eat is unprocessed, unpackaged, or locally grown? Now this is a little bit difficult to know, especially the last question, what is locally grown? It is very difficult to know exactly the kilometers, that is the collection radius of the food. But let us see if we can get some kind of estimate. So if I go to the additional accuracy questions, the first question is, how much of your diet is fresh and unpackaged food? In my case, it is quite dominant. So I am fairly confident that about 80 to 85% of my diet is fresh and unpackaged, mostly cooking at home. How much of your diet is locally grown or produced? That is less than 320 kilometers. This I am not very sure about, but let me take a guess. I will say 75%, because fruits and vegetables typically do not travel beyond that. So that is what I will use. So I will change this also. I'll make it 85%. Let's go to the next step. The next set of questions are about housing. It's asked me which housing type best describes your home. Freestanding, no running water, freestanding running water, multi-story apartment, and so on. In my case, it's a multi-story apartment, so I will select that. And then let's move to the next question. It's again about housing. What material is your house constructed with? This actually varies from region to region. This could be because of the socio-economic conditions as well as weather conditions. So many of the houses in cold countries are made out of wood because of the insulation that they provide. In my case, the house is made of brick and concrete, so I will select that. It also asks me about how many people live in your household. So is it just me or some other family members? So in my case, there are 3 individuals living in the house. So I will select that. And then the next question is again about housing. What is the size of your house? And there is a number given in terms of square feet. If I take an estimate, I don't know the exact value, but I think it should be somewhere around 1000 square feet. So I will select that number. So medium house. Again related to housing, do you have electricity in your home? Yes. How energy efficient is your home? This again might be not straightforward to answer. So I do have generally modern appliances, but I don't have climate controls. Now in the Indian context, this question may not actually be very relevant because we don't have home heating or centralized heating. So probably that question is not very relevant. But let me go ahead with that because the other options do not apply to me. My house is not well insulated and so on. So let me go ahead with average, which is modern appliances and climate controls. What percentage of your house's electricity comes from renewable sources? Now, in order to answer this question, you need to know which company is providing electricity to your region, and you have to find out which power plant is being used to generate that electricity and what is the mix of energy source that is used. In the case of my residence, the electricity is provided by a particular company, and I look through the specific power plant, and most of it is coal and natural gas generated, and there is some portion which is hydro. So in case of renewable, I would say it is not more than 20%. So I will select 20%. What percentage of my home is renewable? I would say 20%, which seems like a reasonable assumption. Again, related to housing, compared to your neighbors, how much trash do you generate? This again, you'll have to watch out for yourself as well as your neighbors. I don't see a lot of difference in terms of trash that is generated, so I will just say same. Mostly it is very similar, not very different. You can have some additional details provided regarding the housing. So what comes closest to your monthly new clothing, footwear and sporting goods purchases? So this is about monthly. So I would maybe say not much, only essentials are purchased on a monthly basis. How often do you purchase new household appliances? I think occasionally is a good selection. I sometimes replace out of date appliances with new models, or I would say infrequent is a better estimate, only if they are broken. Similarly for electronic gadgets, as an individual I am not very much into electronic gadgets, so I don't replace them unless I have to. Books, newspapers and magazines, I think occasionally is a good indicator because I do get a daily newspaper. Then what comes closest to your annual new household furnishing purchases? Again, I would say not much because unless it is absolutely necessary, we generally don't buy any furniture. How much do you recycle? Paper, I would say most, because we do sell our paper to Raddiwala, so it gets recycled. Plastic, I am not very sure because we segregate at the household level and that plastic waste is eventually collected. So I am not aware of how much of that is recycled. So I will keep it as some because I don't really know the answer to that question. So let's move ahead. How far do you have to travel by car or motorcycle each week? Now in this case, I may not be a good indicator as a typical individual because I stay on IIT Bombay campus and therefore I can actually walk, and that's what I typically do. I walk to my office. So I would say very little. maybe 30 kilometers, not more than that. Combining, on a weekly basis, combining maybe some trips that are by a two-wheeler or four-wheeler. So four-wheeler, I would say about 10 kilometers, and let's keep it 13, and two-wheeler again, let's say around 13 kilometers. So cumulatively about 25 to 30 kilometers. What is the average fuel economy of the vehicle you drive the most? I would say that my vehicle is fairly efficient, both in terms of both the two and four-wheeler. So these units are a little confusing, but I will keep them at roughly the central value, like an average number, indicating that the fuel efficiency is fairly average, or at the median value. When you travel by car, how often do you carpool? Again, this question does not really is not very relevant to me. So I would select always, because I very rarely have to travel by car. Or I should select never, because I don't, and my driving itself is fairly low. How far do you travel on public transport each week? It is not much. So once in a while I may use public transport, but not much. So I would keep it as 10 kilometers. Additional accuracy, how far do you travel by train? 8 kilometers. How often do you travel by bus? Not much actually. So I'll keep it as 0 kilometers. Okay, so this is an average. Now the final question is about air travel. How many hours do you fly each year? Now I had done a rough calculation about my air travel. In a typical year, the conditions are very different in the recent times, but in a typical year I have at least one overseas trip, which means about 15 to 20 hours of round trip travel, and some domestic trips. So I would say about 25 to 30 hours. I would let's say select 30 hours as the average number of hours that I fly. So this is the final question in the set of questions that are part of the ecological footprint calculation. So once you answer these questions, you get to the final number, and it tells you what is your ecological footprint. Now it tells me what is the Earth Overshoot Day. So for me as an individual, the Earth Overshoot Day is 8 July, which is not a very good thing, which means that whatever resources that I am using in order to live the way I want to live, or the way I am living my life, I am consuming all the resources by 8th of July. So whatever I consume after that is essentially overexploitation. If everyone lived like me, the way I live, the Earth, we are going to need 1.9 Earths. So this is not a very good result, to be honest, and you can very well question that I have talked about sustainability, and my own lifestyle is not very sustainable, and we will discuss that later. You can also get additional information about how your impact is divided. So the ecological footprint, I told you the unit is global hectares. The footprint number is 3.3. My carbon footprint is 6.2 tons of CO2 emissions equivalent. And my carbon footprint is 65% of the ecological footprint. And this tells me how my ecological footprint is divided. So most of it is because of mobility, that too primarily because of air travel, and the rest is partly because of food, shelter, goods and services. So and it provides additional data and information, so you can explore this website later on your own. So coming back to the discussion, the important learning outcomes of this module, I introduced the concept of ecological footprint, which converts your environmental impact into a land area, and we went through the ecological footprint calculator that is available on the internet.